Okay, so we are live now, Ben. Hi everyone, and by everyone I mean the one person that's watching us right now,
Thank you.
which I think it might be Caitlin. So, anyways,
Caitlin, thank you.
yes. So if you read the title, you know that we're gonna be talking for the next hour or so about Christmas movies. But before, okay, so we are live now. Actually, hi. Sorry, I got distracted because like I didn't turn off the sound of this stream and the other window that I had. Anyways, so yeah, Ben, it's been a while since we made a live stream and since you were in the channel.
Yep.
So what have you been up to? What movies have you been watching lately?
I have watched, starting to lose. Well, no, I guess it's not true to say I've lost count because I always keep count thanks to IMDb. But in the last couple weeks, sorry, 1 second. I'm just okay. Let's get rid of that. Just because I want to see the chat. Anyways, for the last couple weeks, I've been trying to catch up on a whole bunch of different kinds of movies. So, for example, I have this weird thing where even if it's not a Christmas movie, any movie that deals with snow or a cold climate, I feel like now is just an applicable time to watch them, even though like you can watch them anytime. But for example, that's like I'm thinking of Ending Things, which I watched recently, and specifically because on top of just wanting to see it in general, I remember, there's a fair amount of snow in the trailer, so I'm like, yeah, I'll save that for December. So I watched that. I watched Fanny and Alexander for the first time, a movie by the Swedish director Ingmar Bergman, and that technically is like the first 50-55 minutes takes place around Christmas, so it is kind of a Christmas movie and also a fair amount of snow. Then the other thing I've been trying to do is watch movies that some would consider that are either popular movies or movies that some would consider classics, whether they are still regarded that way or not. Like there still seems to be some popularity around them. So, for example, like recently for the first time I watched Moonstruck with Cher. I watched Tombstone with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, something I've never seen before, but I know it has its fans. So I finally got to see that. That was pretty cool. And Bring It On, a cheerleading movie. and I know like there's 5 or 6 of these movies. I'd never seen the first one. I've heard of it many times, and people quoted it all the time at high school. I just never seen it, and I finished it last night, which was also pretty fun. So, yeah, I think I've kind of explained this before, how I just, like, I have a checklist, and I have kind of a, there isn't just, like, a random list of, like, 100 movies I want to see. Like, I'm very specific, I want to see so many of the Best Picture winners. I want to see so many movies on the IMDb Top 250, which, fun fact, I've now seen 246 of the top 250 rated movies on IMDb, which is, like, a new record for me, so I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, and then also trying to catch up on some 2021 movies like Pig. I watched a couple nights ago.
How was that?
That was pretty good. Yeah, and then there's another one from this year that I saw too. But anyways, yeah, I've been watching a lot, just trying to get in as many as I can before I return to work in January.
That sounds like a very busy but fun couple of days and weeks off.
It has been.
So I have not watched Pig because I live in Sault Ste. Marie, so it's a way smaller city than your city. So I just wanted to ask you if it's really that good as I heard, or if it's like maybe a little overhyped or a bit silly because of the subject of it's like John Wick but with a pig.
Yeah, so I think the thing to keep in mind is that, without giving too much away, I think a something that maybe kind of might help someone manage their expectations before they go see a movie like Pig is that, for one, so Nicolas Cage is in it, but I think sometimes like Nicolas Cage has kind of been remembered sometimes like as being in really wacky movies and also acting crazy. So like The Wicker Man and a whole bunch of other movies that I haven't seen yet, but I hear he's just crazy, like he's just gonzo in them. So this movie is not one of them. This movie, like, he actually has a pretty realistic, subdued performance for the most part. It's a really great performance. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets nominated, and just watching it is like another reason of like why I really like Nicolas Cage, despite the fact that he's just done some very strange things, that he is still a really good actor, and I think Pig showed that. So if you're looking for wacky Nicolas Cage, it's not here. The other thing is that when I was watching this, I was also kind of reminded of a little bit of... It says stream is paused. You there, Jesus?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I keep on talking or wait until the stream pauses? So I'm like, yeah, I'll save that for...
I think we're good now. I don't know what happened.
Wacky Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
It's not here.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So, Pig also, in a weird way, kind of reminded me a bit of Mandy, a movie that Nicolas Cage did a couple years ago, where like he loses something very near and dear to him, and basically kind of goes on a rampage to avenge the one that he's lost. And judging by the quick clips and like the pictures I'd seen of Pig, I thought like, oh, is this going to be like John Wick with a pig? Or like, you know, Nicolas Cage has his pig stolen from him and he just goes on a rampage and kills anyone that was involved. Once again, without getting into too many details, it's not that kind of movie. So it's a fairly short movie at like 90 minutes, and I feel like it's definitely a bit of a kind of slow, thought-provoking character piece. There is some violence, not exactly in the way that you would expect, but there is. And yeah, I don't know exactly if people would know, like, oh, keep this in mind for this kind of movie, but that is kind of a bit of the flavor, if that helps. And yeah, I did like it. I thought it was quite good. I definitely think it's worth seeing. But I think for anyone that's kind of expecting crazy Nicolas Cage to be, you know, killing a whole bunch of people because they stole his pig, it's not that kind of movie. It's definitely something a little quieter, but still worth seeing, I would say.
Well, I definitely want to maybe rent it when it's available, unless it's available already. But talking about the more crazy movies that he's made, did you watch a new trailer for, I think it's called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Success, I think. And it's a movie, if you haven't heard about it, it's a movie starring Nicolas Cage about Nicolas Cage.
Of course.
Like a fictional version of himself. Have you watched that trailer?
I have not, but I have seen the thumbnail. Yeah, I did not know Nicolas Cage was playing a fictional version of himself, but hey, that sounds pretty cool. I'm on board.
Yeah, if I figure out, I don't know if I figure it out by the end of it, before the end of the stream, I'm gonna play it here and we can watch it and then just talk about it. But yeah, so I hope that I can figure out how to do that. But another thing that I wanted to talk about that you mentioned a little earlier is that I also like watching movies that are not necessarily Christmas movies, but that have like snow or something like that. Even though Christmas may not be the actual, theme of the movie. And Caitlin's not very happy about that. I was trying to convince her that Into the Spider-Verse is a Christmas movie, and she's not. She didn't take it. But yeah, like I like to know, like I'm happy to know that you also sort of feel the same. What are other movies that you watch, or that you rewatch around this time of year, Ben, that are not necessarily like about Santa Claus or about something like that, but just like Die Hard, for example. Me and Caitlin watch that one every December, for example.
I'm glad you mentioned it because, yes, Die Hard is a movie that I watch most years and around Christmas time. And the thing that I'm pretty stoked about is that a lot of movies that were made and distributed through 20th Century Fox are available on Disney Plus now. And depending on the movie, sometimes it gets the 4K treatment. So, for example, Tombstone, I watched on Disney Plus, and it's just available in HD. The movie still looked good, but it wasn't in 4K.
Yeah.
However, movies like The Santa Claus, Home Alone, and Die Hard, thankfully, are all available in 4K if you have a 4K TV and you have Disney Plus. So I have watched Die Hard many times, but I only ever got a DVD of Die Hard years ago. So the fact that I'll actually be watching it in 4K for the first time this year is actually something that's pretty exciting to me, because I feel like I will kind of notice new things, even though I've seen it many times. So yeah, I would say something like Die Hard is something I watch pretty much every year. And then if we're talking about stuff that is like pretty far away from Christmas but is associated with December, I find I sometimes also watch Star Wars movies in December, because Force Awakens came out in December, and all of the movies, with the exception of Solo: A Star Wars Story in the last 5 years, Star Wars Episode 7, 8, and 9, and Rogue One all came out in December. So I found that I've also been watching a lot of Star Wars around December, because sometimes you're doing a recap to get ready for the Star Wars movie that's coming out, or other times like you'll watch. Like I remember after seeing Force Awakens like 4 times in theaters when it first came out, that some of my cousins that I'd seen the movie with, they were still a little fuzzy on some of the older movies, so we just put the older movies on and watched them around Christmas time too. So it's definitely all sorts of traditional movie things besides Christmas that can happen at December as well. Also too, sometimes like critically acclaimed movies, sometimes they come out in November or December, and I tend to watch them in that month as well. So I might try and catch up on that too before we get deep into award season.
To be honest, talking about awards season, I have not watched many movies that are getting buzz. Have you watched? Oh, okay. Well, that's the answer. Do you think Pig is gonna have any kind of recognition at all? Because like I said, I heard it's really good, but I haven't watched it myself.
I think.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, nothing. It's fine.
Okay. I was just going to say quickly that if Pig is getting recognition in any category, it's probably for Nicolas Cage for Best Leading Actor. But as usual, it seems like a lot of these categories can be very competitive. So he might make the cut, he might not. He's already an Oscar winner, so they might pick someone else. But I could see that that movie getting nominated in that category. We'll see. We'll see. I think in January or February is when the nomination announcement will be happening. So we'll find out in 2 months or less.
I just gotta mention that I clicked something, and I think when you were talking, some audio was playing. I'm not completely sure. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think my screen is still on right now, but I got rid of it in my in Streamlabs, so I gotta fix that too. So could you just I think maybe right now is a good moment to start talking about a little more in depth about what you and I consider to be a Christmas movie. I know that we already sort of talked about that or mentioned a couple things that we consider that are part of a Christmas movie, but can you just talk a little bit more about what it is for you, a Christmas movie?
For sure. And I actually want to reference here. Where is it? I actually someone shared with me this so it's kind of, so I'll have to explain it a little bit here, because I don't know if it's going to look very good on my phone. But I mean, you could.
I think if you send me the picture, I can probably put it on the screen if you want.
Okay.
Yeah. That.
Let me do that. You'll get it in what's the minute here.
I'm just what do you call it?
Okay, I just sent it to you.
Okay, just give me 1 second.
Yeah.
And I will try to do all these things so that it's easier for I'll do. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, just give me 1 minute, not even.
Give you all the need.
Thank you.
You want me to keep on talking in the meantime, Jesus?
Yeah, sure.
Because I can do that. So just to give a bit of context, someone shared with me, I guess, this kind of chart, if you will, basically talking about this Christmas movie levels. So, as we know, sometimes like we might see a movie that briefly has a scene regarding Christmas, or maybe takes place around Christmas, like Batman Returns, for example. But it seems like the actual story doesn't need Christmas, but when it's that's when it's there. So yeah, I guess you can see the chart right now. That I think that's actually the best way to explain like what is and what isn't a Christmas movie. Because yeah, if we're going like what's the most literal definition of a Christmas movie, it would be about the nativity. But I know that there are lots of Christmas movies that might reference the nativity briefly, or the birth of Jesus or whatnot, or they might be a little more non-denominational, might be more like holiday films. But honestly, I think this chart probably explains best what is and isn't a Christmas movie. I've always kind of sworn that like Die Hard is absolutely a Christmas movie. Here it's marked as a level 4, so I like that it's still technically, you know, calling it a Christmas movie, but it specifies that plot primarily takes place during Christmas or Advent, and in Die Hard's case, it takes place Christmas Eve into Christmas morning. So yeah, I think that's actually the best way to describe it, and I know that for some movies, there's just a lot of debate with like whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not, whether something like Shazam, part of it takes place during Christmas, but I don't really recall it being a Christmas movie. Like, would I call it a Christmas movie? Not exactly, but I suppose if Christmas plays some small part in your movie, it still in some part is a Christmas movie. And I know that sometimes there can be kind of these black and white definitions about Christmas movies, right? That it's like, oh, Die Hard, like, oh, you could just set that in summer and it'd be the same thing, so therefore it's not a Christmas movie. But I would disagree and say that there's a reason why it's set during Christmas, and that the whole kind of setup of the Nakatomi.
I think that it definitely like that Christmas is more of an important theme than a lot of people may think when it comes to Die Hard. Also, I know that the main song, what was it, the Ode to Joy, is not necessarily like Christmassy, but it sounds kind of like Christmassy. So
yep, no, it does.
Yeah, like I know that it has a lot to do with Christmas. It's just like an action movie, and there's not a lot of Santa Claus imagery and all that. But I definitely agree with you that it is a Christmas movie.
I think another like strong argument for Die Hard being a Christmas movie is that I think we've seen Christmas Vacation is also a good example of this, where it kind of, we all have this perfect idea of like what Christmas should be, right? Spending time with our family, it's snowing outside, gifts and good food and generosity and whatnot. But sometimes like Christmas can be a very stressful time for some people, right? Like I think Jonathan Taylor Thomas made a movie back in like the 90s called like I'll Be Home for Christmas. And I mean, I've seen it, but many years ago. And I think like it's just about him trying to get home in time for Christmas, and heck, even Hawkeye is currently dealing with that right now too. So I think that's why Die Hard also kind of resonates with me as a Christmas movie, because you do have, John McClane is trying to kind of smooth things over with his wife, and things aren't working out that well. And then when the terrorists come and take over Nakatomi Plaza, it's like, man, he just wanted to try and tie up loose ends and have a nice Christmas with his wife, and now he's got a really difficult thing that he has to deal with before he might actually get the opportunity to do that. So I think that's why in a way it kind of resonates with anyone that's had like a stressful Christmas or difficulty, or maybe you go to school in a different country and you don't have enough money to go back home for the holidays, so you're kind of having Christmas by yourself or with your friends or whatnot. So suffice to say, I think Die Hard is still a Christmas movie, not in the traditional sense, but the chart that Jesus shared earlier, I think basically makes it pretty clear as to like what is and what isn't a Christmas movie.
Yeah, the chart is up there again.
The chart.
So before we keep talking a little bit more in depth about Christmas movies, like more like level 1, 2, 3, according to the chart, I want to ask you, what have you thought so far about Hawkeye?
I think it's pretty decent. Um, I think part of the fun of it is that it does feel Christmassy. Is that they, chose to release it at a time where it does kind of help you get into the season a little bit. I think that's why we like watching Christmas movies. Is that it just gets us into that holiday spirit. I think like overall the performances are good, and it's still certainly enjoyable. Without getting into too much spoilers, if you haven't seen Hawkeye, there's like an action scene that takes place on a bridge. I think in the second or third episode. I thought that was a lot of fun. Like there's some cool stuff that's going on there. But yeah, I think out of all the MCU shows that have come out this year, Hawkeye being the fifth, that I don't know if I'd say like Hawkeye is one of the best, but I think it is kind of doing what it's supposed to do. Like it's still entertaining enough, and there's still good performances, and maybe it's not like hilarious, but there's still a little chuckle to be had here and there. I haven't seen the fifth episode that came out today, so I'll be watching that probably after we finish this live stream. But I think it's still good enough. I'd still recommend it, and I like in the first episode that we have an opportunity. The scene doesn't last that long, but Hawkeye. We kind of see how he's kind of dealing with some of the events of Avengers Endgame, one that particularly really affected him, and we get like a couple minutes to kind of see how he's dealing with that. And I like that. I think that's kind of the cool thing about serials, is that something big can happen in one episode or installment of a serial, and then a little later on, like we actually get to see like I have characters kind of totally recovered from big events that have happened in the past one, or like how do they deal with that? And we know sometimes maybe they just kind of move on because there's lots of big conflict going on, or other times maybe they do have a few moments of quiet where they can actually think about what's really affecting them. So I think that was handled well. So I think it's a fun show.
I think you're gonna like the episode that came out today. We just actually watched it right before the live stream, and it was pretty good. The ending is really, really good. I just don't like one thing about it, and I'm not gonna talk about that.
Yeah,
it's someone's accent. To be honest, I'm not gonna say anything else. It's just someone's accent in this movie. But now that we're talking about Marvel and the new Spider-Man movie is coming out tomorrow. Here in Canada, at least, I was talking to you, Ben, about how for some reason movies come out like a day or two earlier in Mexico, for example, and Latin America, and I told him what I heard was the reason, but I'm honestly not sure that was the reason. Something to do with the logistics of the distribution and all that of all the copies. But anyways, are you excited? Have you rewatched any of the Spider-Man movies, to prepare for this one, or just out of hype or anything like that?
Yeah, funny you should mention that. I haven't really rewatched any of them, except I had, for some reason, a bit of a hankering to watch some of my favorite scenes from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in the last week or so, and I think maybe it's just because there are some similarities in the fact that we're going to see kind of different Spider-Men coming together in No Way From Home. So I was kind of rewatching some of those scenes, and yeah, it's just a big, bright, colorful movie, really fun. I really enjoyed it, and what I also thought was nice too is that once my son saw all those different Spider-Men and women in Spider-Verse in the third act finale, yeah, he stopped playing with his toys. He stopped doing what he was doing because he was getting into it. And I was trying to explain to him, like, oh, there's this Spider-Man, there's that Spider-Man, and they're trying to do this and whatnot. And I think he really liked it. So I haven't done that much recapping. I'd like to think I'm pretty familiar with, like, especially the first three Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies. Those two, I'm just, they're okay. I'm not a huge fan of them. But I am also fairly familiar with Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies, given that, pretty much once every year from like 2016 2019 we've been seeing him either in an Avengers movie or Spider-Man movie, so I'm pretty familiar with those too. But I like to think like I still have enough of a memory that hopefully if I do go see the new Spider-Man movie, that I won't be totally lost or anything like that. It does incorporate all of them, and I like to think I'm fairly well versed in all of them.
I don't know. Like, I think I probably sent you the video that I made like last week. I made a Spider-Man tier video of all the Spider-Man movies.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to do your own, and then we can talk a little bit more about that. But before that, I gotta set everything up, obviously, in the stream, and it's gonna take a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you want to talk about any Christmas movies that you recommend, because my friend Marco asked that. So we can talk about that while I, set everything up. I would be the one to have, like, I would have to do in my computer, like, the actual, like, putting every movie in each tier. But you can tell me and I'll do it, and then we can discuss that a little more. But yeah, like I said, what movie recommendations do you have about Christmas movies?
Yeah, so I think it goes without saying that I would absolutely recommend Die Hard. It's one of my favorite movies ever. But yeah, if you are looking for more traditional Christmas movies, two that I absolutely have to mention are It's a Wonderful Life, which, once again, I think a lot of people are fairly familiar with. It's on TV every year around this time. Definitely one of the most moving and inspirational movies I've ever seen. And yeah, it's great. And I know, once again, there's kind of an interesting thing with It's a Wonderful Life, because most of the movie, like half the movie, does not take place during Christmas. It's kind of setting up and talking about George Bailey's life from when he was a kid to being an adult. So really, it's only the second half that feels more like a Christmas movie, but highly recommended. It's up there with Die Hard when it comes to like my favorite films. One that I have to give a shout out to, that I'm guessing if I think it was Marco, the name of the guy who was asking for Christmas movie recommendations. If you haven't seen this movie that I'm about to mention, Marco, please, if you have Netflix, I'm assuming you might, to go see it. Arthur Christmas is an animated movie from 2011, and it's made by Aardman Pictures. Very British movie, very British cast. Like, if you were to look through the cast members, you'd be like, yep, a whole bunch of British people. Yes, I gotta say that Arthur Christmas is one of those movies that did not make a lot of money when it was first released in theaters, and I'd like to think that with each passing year, more and more people will see it. But yeah, I've been a very big advocate of it, because it is a movie that is just very magical, like very Christmassy. And I guess to kind of give a bit of context so you know just how Christmassy it is, they talk about how, like the very first Santa Claus, there came, like Saint Nick, there came a time where like he got old and had to retire, so someone else basically has to kind of step in to be the Santa Claus, right? But then, of course, as time goes on, when they get old, like someone else has to basically kind of step in. It becomes this whole operation. So we see, in maybe a typical Christmas movie that, like, oh, you have, the usual looking Santa and 40 or 50 elves that kind of make toys and whatnot. And in Arthur Christmas, we actually see it's this very complicated, technological, gigantic operation that is put together, where you have the current Santa Claus who's about to retire, and when he does, of course, that means that two of his sons, which are both involved in this operation of like getting all the gifts out to kids on Christmas, one of those kids is going to be the next Santa, but we're not sure who yet. And then what ends up happening is that in a slight hiccup, a child's missed. So all the gifts are delivered to all the children throughout the whole world, but one child was missed. One child did not get their toy. So they're celebrating a successful operation and whatnot. And Arthur Christmas is a guy who's kind of clumsy, but so he works in mail. They try to keep him away from the big important parts of the operation. He's the one that figures out that a child's been missed, and it's this bicycle that this girl really wanted, and she didn't get because of this accident. So he has to basically try and get to this girl who lives in England, very far away from the North Pole, of course, to try and get this bicycle to her before the sun rises and before it's Christmas morning. Suffice to say, So suffice to say, yeah, this movie is magical. It's funny. It's very inventive and entertaining, and I just love it so much. And I wish more people would watch it. So anyone who's watching right now that hasn't seen Arthur Christmas, please, for the love of God, watch it. It's on Netflix, and it's a really great time. So yeah, that would be my biggest recommendation. That is not like your kind of classic, like Home Alone, Muppets Christmas Carol. That like there are a lot of common ones that we've seen many times before. But if you haven't seen Arthur Christmas, please watch it.
It was a really good movie, and I actually watched it because Caitlin, you recommended that movie to Caitlin, and
I did, yes.
Yeah, and she told me to watch it, and I really enjoyed that movie. It's really good, and we actually have to watch that maybe this weekend, actually.
Yeah.
So anyways, right now we're gonna be doing your Spider-Man tier list. I know that it's kind of like not the best transition going from talking about Christmas movies and then Spider-Man, but that's what's popular right now, and I think that because it like the new Spider-Man movie is coming out tomorrow, it's a good time to do it. So here we go. It's gonna you can probably see it now, Ben.
Just barely, but I mean, like I can rhyme off all the movies, so
Yeah.
I'll like, is it in chronological or sorry, like in order?
Yeah, we'll just
movie
go chronologically. I'll just tell you. So the first movie is obviously Spider-Man by Sam Raimi. In which tier would you put it?
So, sorry, I have one quick question before we get started here, because I've seen these tier lists all the time.
Yeah.
I just got to confirm. Well, what does the S stand for? I know it's like the top tier. What does S stand for?
I have no clue. Ben. I just
but
know that
it's
the
top
best
tier.
Yes.
Like
So
spectacular.
that's where I'm assuming you're gonna put Venom. That's where I put it. Yep. And then I know that the one we're talking about right now is Spider-Man, the first one with Tobey Maguire. That's tier D for you. I know you don't like it.
What are you?
Yes, we're just gonna. Now, okay. In all seriousness, where would you put
Jesus,
the
you're
first
messing
one?
with me, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so Spider-Man can go in the. I believe A is the second best.
Yes.
So Spider-Man, the first one is good. I mean, it clearly helped kind of usher this golden age of comic book movies that we have now. Not a great movie, but good enough. So I would definitely put it there. Yeah, that's where I put it.
Why would you not put it in the S tier? What's holding you back?
Because I think sometimes. And like I said, Spider-Man is pretty good at doing this, but I think sometimes with first big installments, and like heck, even I love Star Wars, obviously, but A New Hope is a movie that, as amazing as it is, as influential as it is, sometimes you can kind of tell with movies. Sometimes you can tell how they're kind of finding their footing, if you will, right? That. Even though like there's still great ideas and everything's still done fairly well. And I mean, all things considered, like Star Wars is still a great movie without a doubt. But there are little things here and there that you see, sometimes with the visual effects, sometimes with like performances or whatnot, that, there are certain things that they were trying to figure out, and they tend to get improved. Like, for example, Empire Strikes Back, I think, is better than A New Hope. So I feel like they were able to improve certain things that maybe weren't that great with the first Star Wars. And I think Spider-Man 2 is very much like that, too. The first Spider-Man is that, as good as it is, there are still... I don't know if, like, the first Spider-Man movie blew me away in every aspect and had me feeling like, wow, that was a flawless movie. It still did what it had to do. It was still very successful and got the second Spider-Man movie made. But I would say something like Spider-Man 2 would go in the S tier, the top one, because I feel like that is one where, everything was just better. The action scenes were better. The visual effects were better. I found the performances were better.
Yeah, definitely.
The villain, even in some ways, was better. Like, it definitely made for a more memorable experience. So that would be my reasoning for why Spider-Man doesn't go in the top tier.
Yeah, I think that even though it's still a little cheesy in some, like, especially when Toby is acting as Peter Parker, I do think that the second one definitely toned that down a lot. And
Yeah.
the first one, I love it, and it's the first time I ever watched Spider-Man. I was pretty young when I watched it, because I think I must have been like 5 years old when I watched it. Yeah,
Mhm.
I know. I mean, I'm a young guy. Caitlin won't stop reminding me of that. But anyways, yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I'm assuming that you would put Spider-Man 2 in the S tier.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Great movie. Why? Because I think I kind of mentioned earlier how it just does everything a little better than the first Spider-Man movie. Um, I think I think a sequel always has kind of an interesting job to do, where a character has certain conflicts in the first installment, and then in the second installment, you have to figure out um, what can we do that still feels like it's part of that world, but that's not exactly the same kind of conflict that Peter had to go through in the first movie, Peter Parker. And I think actually kind of having this story where he kind of loses his powers and decides to maybe not be Spider-Man anymore, I think is actually pretty fascinating. Right, pretty fascinating that in the second movie, he's like, maybe I've done enough as Spider-Man and I need to leave it be or whatnot. So I think that's really cool. I think that's a really great conflict to have. It is kind of a classic thing. It's kind of like how in A New Hope, the Millennium Falcon works pretty well, and then Empire Strikes Back, the Millennium Falcon is not working well. Like it's just you take something that normally works well, and then once you kind of break it a bit, you have to find a way to fix it to kind of keep things moving. And I would also say too that I love the scene where Peter Parker has to admit to Aunt May what really happened in the first movie involving Uncle Ben's death. So yeah, there's just a lot of great, quiet, meaningful moments that kind of give depth to the movie, but there's still a lot of excitement. Like that train scene
Yeah.
in Spider-Man 2 is freaking awesome. I love it, and seeing that in theaters was a really cool and special experience. And yeah, I genuinely think this movie is awesome, better than the first one, and yes, it's a tier for me.
So I think that it was definitely meant to be in the shadow of Spider-Man 2, the following Spider-Man 3,
Yeah,
because like you get to a certain point where like everything is so good that like inevitably or most likely the next movie is not gonna be as good. Where would you put Spider-Man 3?
I would put Spider-Man 3. Um, I would put it in. I think so. I think it's the B row, right below the first Spider-Man. I would, yeah. Sorry, not quite up there. Spider-Man 3 is definitely one of those mixed bag movies, right? Where I think a lot of people remember the bad parts, remember Toby going goth and dancing, and Topher Grace's Venom and all that, and maybe like putting in too many villains. Uh, but there are still moments of the movie that I think are good, particularly the birth of Sandman, which is like one of my favorite scenes ever in a movie. It's just unfortunate that the movie it comes from is not very good.
Yeah.
But I think there are still a lot of good moments in Spider-Man 3. It's just unfortunate that there's also a lot of like not great moments.
I think that a thing that is always excellent in this trilogy is the camera work and the
Mm-hmm.
cinematography. And I used to always think that even though the CGI is a little bit dated, I always thought
Yeah.
that it still sort of holds up pretty well. And I think that
Yep.
one of the reasons why is because they actually, I think in most scenes the only CGI is actually Spider-Man, because I know that Sam Raimi actually made this kind of uh, I think he put a bunch of cameras in some steel wires, and he actually shot the way that Spider-Man is going to be traveling and swinging. I think that he
Yeah.
actually recorded that on film. So I think that
Yep.
it definitely helps not only make the scenes and sequences of Spider-Man just swinging in New York look really good, but it
Yeah.
also makes I feel like if it was all CGI, it would definitely be more dated. But I think that that's always been a really good aspect of all of these movies. So even like you said, even
I
though
agree.
it's not the best one out of the three, it's still pretty good. If
Yeah.
you ignore some of the strange scenes,
Hmm.
like Toby dancing. But after that one, they were gonna make the fourth movie, but they decided not to, and they decided to reboot the movie. So where would you put the first Amazing Spider-Man in the list?
Oh, geez. So I saw this once, like shortly after it came out.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably I'd put it in the tier B with Spider-Man 3. Not an awful movie, but yeah, not exactly one that really got me excited again about Spider-Man. I mean, I guess Andrew Garfield is fine, but I wonder if maybe he was a little too cool to play the role. I think that's why. I mean, I know a lot of people crap on Tobey Maguire and say like, "Oh, he's such a bad Spider-Man." I don't feel that way because I think like I liked that he was awkward. I liked that he was a little weird. I feel like that's kind of the fun about um, Spider-Man's alter ego, right? Is that he's this kind of young, awkward teenager, but when he puts that suit on, he's Spider-Man. He's a superhero, and he does so much good for the city of New York. So yeah, so I think the Amazing Spider-Man is a fine movie. Um, so yeah, I would put it there. And once again, like I literally saw this movie 9 years ago,
Yeah.
and like I've kind of been reminded of certain parts of the movie because of like extended reviews and whatnot that I've watched. But yeah, I've seen this movie once when it first came out in theaters, and it's fine.
What about the sequel?
Oh, the sequel. I
I, I,
have.
I don't understand why they decided to make Electro get his teeth fixed when he became Electro. Like they have an actual close up of like when he's in the tank with the eels and he's becoming Electro.
Yeah,
There's a close up of his tooth gap just closing, and I don't understand. That's just one of the
yeah.
many things that are weird about this movie. So anyways, where would you put it? I just wanted to
I
mention that because
would.
it definitely stuck with me. I don't know why.
Yeah,
It's just odd.
yeah. I'm gonna be pretty harsh on this movie and put it in the D tier. I don't think it's a very good movie. Um, and once again, I saw it once in theaters shortly after it came out. I've seen a few reviews since, so I still kind of have basic knowledge of what happens in the movie. But yeah, I don't think it's very good. I don't think a lot of the choices were well made, and it's kind of a forgettable movie. Like there are some movies that I've seen only once around the time of Amazing Spider-Man 2 that I still remember very well, and that's a credit to the filmmakers and what they did. But a movie like this, yeah, I have a hard time remembering that much about it because I think yeah, there were a lot of missteps, and yeah, not a fan.
Did you like when you want to watch it? Did you have much hope for it, or were you just like watching it because it's a Spider-Man movie? Or
Yeah, like rarely do I go into movies wanting to hate them. I mean, unless I'm watching something like The Room or Mac and Me, like something that I know is bad, and I'm kind of manage my expectations. But a movie like this, like I said, like the first Amazing Spider-Man was a fine movie. So I think when I was going to see the second one, yes, I was seeing it because I'm a completionist in some ways. So I'm like, well, yeah, I have to see the sequel to the Amazing Spider-Man, and yeah, it did not do that much to win me over. I gave it a shot, and after once, I was like, "Yep, I don't need to revisit this again."
yeah, I actually rented it today because I wanted to see if it was as bad as I remembered it, and it is, and I didn't finish it.
Yeah,
It's just strange and bad. I don't understand how they came up with all of these creative decisions. But anyways, it's no surprise that after this movie came out, they decided to reboot again Spider-Man, and luckily it was not completely Sony. It was a part of the MCU now. So
yeah,
it even though I think that these movies are a bit too much like a Marvel movie, like an MCU movie, following all the same the same type of humor, the same structure, I think that they're definitely better than the Amazing Spider-Man movies. But what do you think of this one, starting with Homecoming?
Homecoming, I would put that in tier A next to Spider-Man. I think Homecoming made a lot of right decisions. I think it was wise of them to find a way to introduce Spider-Man into Civil War and Homecoming. It does feel like it kind of has that teenage movie formula, right? It kind of has that music. It has like there's still lots of emphasis on the on like teenagers hanging out with other teenagers and like, oh, I've got a crush on so and so and getting ready for the dance and whatnot. And yeah, they kind of found a cool way, because it's interesting. Like that is something that even like the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man is that like they don't really feel like high school movies. They feel like superhero movies. And I feel like Homecoming kind of made a wise decision by saying, let's make this feel like part teenage high school movie and part superhero movie. And I think they weaved both very well together. And yeah, just kind of breathed some fresh air into Spider-Man after the missteps of Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. And as much as I love Tobey, I do agree with a lot of people in saying that Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. He is. He is not too cool, not too awkward. He definitely kind of has a bit of like Michael J. Fox in his performance. And yes, I love him. And I am so glad that he's been able to be Spider-Man as many times as he has. Like, if by my count, he's done 3 movies, so like Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, and then 3 of his own Spider-Man movies. He's done 6 movies as Spider-Man in the last 6 years, and yeah, I think he's nailed it every time.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got a really good balance between being a good Peter Parker and being a good Spider-Man.
Yep.
I'm definitely, just because I watched the Sam Raimi movies first when I was really young. Tobey's always gonna be my Spider-Man. Even though I don't think he's the best. But
Yeah.
but yeah. So after that movie goes Far From Home. What do you think about that one?
Far From Home, I would also put in the A tier with Spider-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming. I think Far From Home is fun because while it still kind of has that teenage high school flavor a little bit, we also now have the kind of how would you say it? It's kind of similar in a way to movies like Eurotrip and Road Trip, although not as R-rated, if you will, where like you just have a whole bunch of teenagers and they're going through Europe and they're going to go check out these different sites and whatnot. And Peter Parker just wants to have a nice fun trip, and of course he has to his they need him as Spider-Man for all the things that are going on. So for that, I thought it was very entertaining. And I don't know about you, but I have yet to see a bad Jake Gyllenhaal performance. I thought he was an awesome Mysterio, and yeah, I think he plays the role very well and was such a fun villain to watch. So yes, I think Far From Home is just as good as Homecoming, and yeah, a lot of a very fun ride, which of course like led to a very exciting cliffhanger, which we get to see a bit of, which we finally get to see paid off in No Way Home.
I actually think that I think that No Way Home is the movie starts right after like the scene, like
I
the
wouldn't be
scene.
surprised.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that they actually uploaded that like the first like 50 seconds of it to
Oh, gee.
YouTube. Yeah, because I think they played that in some talk show and then they just uploaded it. So I'm pretty sure that the movie starts right after Peter's identity is revealed to everyone. So I'm really excited to see No Way Home.
Yeah, man.
But anyways, we after that one, I got Into the Spider-Verse, and I'm assuming it's gonna be probably up here. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Spider-Verse, on top of just being beautifully animated and very funny too. Like there are some wacky gags that happen like in the first 30 or 40 minutes, and I just think they're hilarious. I think one of the great things about Spider-Verse is that the idea of having like different Spider-Man and women coming together from different universes all together, and they have to like save the day. It's interesting that for some reason, like I haven't seen that many movies because like this whole idea of like, oh, different characters coming from different universes and have to save the day in one universe is I feel like I've seen stuff like that in TV show episodes more often than I've seen it in actual big budget movies. And I think that was the cool thing about Spider-Verse is that you had the opportunity to introduce Miles Morales, which I'll be honest, before Spider-Verse I knew very little about. I just knew he was another Spider-Man. But I think this was a very clever way to involve different kind of Spider-Men and women, but still have the star of the movie be Miles Morales. Even though, if I remember correctly, I think we see like 2 different Peter Parkers, and and I just think like they took kind of a concept that we've seen in like episodes of TV shows of smaller shows that probably don't have like $50 million budgets for each episode, and they were able to put that into a big movie where, yes, we still kind of got a bit of like Spider-Man origin story, hence I think the running joke of like, okay, here's how it happened, and every character is kind of like talking about how they became Spider-Man. But yeah, I think this movie did it very well, and it was an absolute blast. And I did see the trailer for Spider-Verse 2 Part 1, so I assume we're getting more, which is great. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But yes, the Spider-Verse winning the Oscar for Best Animated Film over another movie I really liked, Incredibles 2, I think was it was a wise decision. That movie is such a fun ride.
I think that's probably my second favorite movie, Spider-Man movie, right after Spider-Man 2, as well, because it's just so good and so fun, and I really appreciate the fact that they didn't have many movies to introduce all of the different versions of Spider-Man, which is impressive, because I feel like every single character, even though they didn't have all of them as much screen time as Miles or the other Spider-Man, I think that even though they didn't have that much time on screen, they were all pretty fleshed out. We know the basics, we know what we need to know, and I'm really excited to the new trailer that came out for the sequel. It looks pretty interesting in my opinion. I like that the animation style changes, I think, when he goes to a different world, and it looks pretty promising. And if it's the same team as that made the first Into the Spider-Verse movie, then I have a lot of hope for this movie.
Please be good.
And this has nothing to do with anything that we have talked about during this stream, but I want to ask you your opinions on the Matrix movies, because I had only watched the first movie like a couple of years ago, and I didn't like it that much. I liked it, but it didn't blow my mind or anything. So this year I watched the trailer for the 4th Matrix movie, and I was like, oh, it looks kind of cool. And then I watched the first one again, and I really liked it this time. And then I watched the second movie like 2 days ago, and I really liked it. I think it's definitely very cheesy and a product of its time, but I just want to ask you what you think without spoilers, because I haven't watched the third movie on the Matrix trilogy, because I'm interested in hearing that. The new Matrix movie is coming out next week, and I am working on making a video talking about the trilogy. So, and it's coming out in a couple days. I think I'll probably upload it on Sunday, I think. But because I don't want to talk too much more about that, I wanna ask you what you think of the trilogy.
Yeah, so geez, in a nutshell, I love the first Matrix movie. It blew me away when I was a teenager, seeing it for the first time. Yeah, I'd never seen anything quite like bullet time, so there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in that first Matrix movie. And I love that it is one part pretty philosophical. Like, there's definitely lots of scenes where, I guess, talking about free will and the kind of, the life they're living in the Matrix versus what they're actually living in the real world. There's all sorts of cool stuff, and it's just a great action movie. It is. There's a lot of fun, exciting stuff that they do with bullet time, and also with just all the martial arts and I know kung fu and whatnot. The second movie I like. Obviously, it's hard to capture that lightning in a bottle that the first one did, but I do think that the second movie has some incredible fight scenes. Like, I would, as blasphemous as it sounds, I would say that I think the second movie has my favorite fight scenes, because I love Neo fighting against 100 Agent Smiths. I love when he's fighting the 6 different people with the different weapons at the Merovingian's place. I love the highway chase. Like, there's still a lot of cool stuff in the second one. And as for the third one, while it is my least favorite, I still really like a lot of the mech warrior stuff, right? Like having to defend Zion and all these people in these mech. I'm trying to. Is that what they're? I feel like I'm kind of getting the name wrong here, but yeah, like I love all the kind of the mech robots that they are able to use to try and fight against all the Sentinels. So even the third one probably doesn't finish on like highest note. I still have a soft spot for it. I still think it's entertaining just enough, even if it is a bit of a letdown from the other two. And yes, I'm pretty excited for the fourth one. I don't know if I'm exactly going out to rush it to see it in theaters, but I always get very curious, right? Like the last Matrix movie, Matrix Revolutions, came out at the end of 2003, so that means it's 18 years old now by the time we're getting another one. So, like, I'm always curious, like, when you have a franchise and it has such a long break before you get the next movie, like, you can't help but wonder, like, did they wait too long, or is there still some magic there? I hope there's some magic there, but we'll see soon enough.
Yeah, I am really excited, but I don't have. I'm trying to not be too hopeful, because I don't like the other movies that these directors made, the Wachowskis, or I don't know how to pronounce their name.
No, that's right, Wachowski. Yeah, the Wachowski brothers made the first three Matrix movies, and now it's the Wachowski sisters making the fourth movie.
Oh, actually, no. I think it's only Lana. The other.
Oh, right. Sorry, no, yeah. That's right. Actually, it's just Lana, formerly Larry. But yeah, that's right. It is one of them. Yeah, not the other Wachowski.
Before we finish, I got 2 more questions, because Caitlin was saying, "Oh, I thought it was a Christmas special." So we're going to talk about Christmas movies. Before I ask you like your favorite movie or something like that, I want to ask you, which Christmas movies that are considered like a classic do you not really like that much?
Geez, I don't know if there are any. Like, I guess if I had to pick one that maybe I like a little. Okay, so White Christmas is a serviceable Christmas movie. Like, it is obviously just, there are lots of Christmas songs and decorations and snow. Like, it definitely gets you into the spirit. But I do think that White Christmas is, when it comes to story, like Christmas stories, I think it's one of the weaker ones. You kind of get this sense that sometimes in certain movies, they don't put the most effort into like making the best story, because I guess there's kind of this idea that, well, you know what? Like, we have the songs, we have the funny moments, we have decorations, we have talk about Christmas preparations. Like, we have all this fun stuff that should still keep the viewer engaged. And I still like White Christmas. I think it's fine. But it is definitely kind of one of those movies that I think uses the trope of like the misunderstanding, and it has to be kind of manufactured in a certain way to kind of keep the conflict going. I mean, I don't want to get into, because I could spend 10 minutes talking about my problems with this, but I guess what I'm getting at is that sometimes like there's certain conflict that happens in a story, and it's like, oh, you could very much easily solve this with a quick conversation, but you do that and the conflict's gone. So you just can't do that. You have to kind of let that go for a bit. And so some of the story beats in the movie I think are not great, but I still think it is a classic, a Christmas classic, because it still does just that. It is a very Christmassy feeling movie. It will definitely get you into the mood. It's still got lots of good songs, and I've always thought Danny Kaye was really entertaining, along with the other stars of the movie. Just not the best story, so I think that's how I'd answer that.
I wish I could comment on that, but I have not watched that movie, to be honest. But
Okay.
a movie that I think it's a classic, but I only watched for the first time last year, that I didn't like at all.
Yeah.
Or not. I just didn't like it. I don't hate it or anything, but I don't like Christmas Vacation. Um, yeah. I don't know. I never watched it until, like I said, last year, and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't even know how to put it into words. I was expecting something that I would love as much as Home Alone, for example, and I didn't get it. I
Yeah.
don't know. It just didn't get to me, I guess.
Uh, I think Christmas Vacation is pretty solid. I think it still holds up with laughs and whatnot. Um, it's such a small thing, but Beverly D'Angelo, who plays Clark Griswold's wife, because like Clark obviously like gets center stage most of the movie, because a lot of it is about him and his difficulties and waiting on that Christmas bonus for the pool he wants to put in. But yeah, I got to give a little shout out to Beverly D'Angelo, because I think there are so many funny moments and little things that she does, even though she's not a big, like there's I think a point in the movie where she Clark grabs her and is kind of like, holding into an embrace. I think it's like when they're looking at all the Christmas lights on the house, and there's a moment where she's kind of, you only see her eyes, and like Clark is talking to someone else and her eyes kind of dart back and forth, and like there's just a lot of funny moments with her. So I've always enjoyed her performance. But yeah, that's interesting. Geez, I feel like we could make a whole episode about that. But I would encourage you. It doesn't have to be this Christmas, but another Christmas, I'd say give it another shot, because I do think it is a very funny movie.
I might do that next week before Christmas, because I would like to talk more in depth about it with you, because like I said, I only watched it that one time. And
Yeah.
I'm now that I know what happens in the movie, I'm not expecting anything really. So I would like to revisit it and talk to you about it, and
Yeah, man, let's do it.
keep talking. I also so like Caitlin was asking, do you have a guilty pleasure Christmas movie?
Yeah, I was trying to think about that, because I mean, of all the Christmas movies that I kind of like and return to time and time again, I don't know if I would call any of them guilty pleasure. I mean, like, do you have an answer for it, Jesus? I'm going to try and look at a list quickly here and see if I can.
Oh, I do. I know that.
Okay, you
I
tell
got
them.
two answers. The first one is a movie that I know that it's not very good. Like, it's just another comedy, and it doesn't have much that stands out really. And it is, for me, I really like this movie, and it is The Night Before. I think it's not a great movie, but I really like it, and I've watched it like 3 times for the past, like this year and the past 2 years, and I don't know, I just like watching it. I like being in the mood of like, oh, this three guys are really good friends, and they're like doing their last time, like for the last time they're doing this Christmas tradition, and they're going to a party, and they want it to be awesome. And I
Yeah.
don't like this kind of people in real life. All my friends are really quiet, but I really enjoy seeing these three characters doing what they do. So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that movie. And another movie that I know that is not considered a great movie, but I know that a lot of people have a soft spot for it, including myself. This is one of my favorite Christmas movies ever. Is Jingle All the Way. I really, really like it. I used to watch
Yeah,
that
that's a good
movie
answer.
with my dad all the time, and I love it, and I'm looking forward to watching it again this Christmas.
I think I,
Oh, sorry.
oh, I think I do have an answer now. Daddy's Home 2. I've never seen the first Daddy's Home for whatever reason, but my mom happened to by chance watch Daddy's Home 2 shortly after it came out, and she's like, Ben, you have to come over, and I want to show you Daddy's Home 2. And I was like, okay, I haven't seen the first one. She's like, nah, it doesn't matter. It's fine. I'm like, okay. And yeah, Daddy's Home 2 is a very funny movie. I think there are some very strange scenes, and I think sometimes the humor is just kind of cheap. You know, like yeah. If I was a director doing that movie, I would have changed a lot of stuff. But it is still a funny movie, and I think it's also like it's more fun when you have like 5 or 6 people all joined together to watch it. Because I did find myself laughing, and of course my mom was like, "Oh, so what did you think?" And I was like, "It was fine." And of course she's like shocked, right? Because like, it's her new favorite movie. But yeah, Daddy's Home 2, not a great movie by any means, but it's fun enough. And yeah, I would call that a guilty pleasure because I have actually watched it a few times because of my mom, because she just adores it. She had a grand old time with it. So she likes to revisit it every Christmas now. It's a new part of her Christmas movie watching tradition.
I also watched that movie only once, and it was because Caitlin told me to watch it, and she loves it, and I enjoyed it. I didn't think it's a great movie, but I really enjoyed it, and now that you mentioned it in this live stream, I think we should definitely watch that again. We have a lot of movies that we gotta watch before Christmas, but I think that one
Well, there's
is.
just so many, man. The list just gets longer. It never gets shorter, unless you like. Yeah, it always gets longer for me. Not enough
And I
time.
think for the past 2 years, I want to watch It's a Wonderful Life,
Mm.
but I want to watch it with Caitlin, and I haven't.
Yeah.
So maybe this year we will, hopefully.
Do it.
But
Do it.
do you have any last thoughts or anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I guess I'll just quickly say that I do love Christmas movies, and like I said earlier, sometimes I get a little. I can get. Oh, shoot, what's the word? You know, like sometimes I just like watching movies that are set in the snow. That like there's snow. Like even like I'm thinking of ending things. I was like, there's snow in that movie. I'll watch it for Christmas time. So yeah, all sorts of movies I like to watch around Christmas time. But I've definitely mentioned some of my favorites earlier on, and I look forward to kind of rewatching them in the next week or so. Uh, yeah, and another funny note too I should add is that in the last couple of years I've worked on many made-for-TV movie Christmas movies, like you know a lot of Christmas romantic comedies and whatnot. I have not seen any of those just because like I watch them made. I've read the scripts for them a million times, so maybe I'll watch one of the Christmas movies that I worked on in the coming years. But I'm not as excited for whatever reason, just because like I kind of already know what happens, and I already got to see a lot of the exciting stuff of how it was made at the time. But I know a lot of people get into them, and sometimes people watch them and see my name in the credits, and they're like, "You worked on that?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because Christmas movies are all the rage now. So even though I work on those sometimes for most of the year, I love Christmas. It is. I know it's cheesy to say, but it is the most wonderful time of the year, and Christmas movies help me get in that kind of cozy Christmas spirit that I feel. So yeah, great time.
Well, thank you for being in this live stream, Ben. I'm really
No
excited,
worries.
and it was a really good time, at least for me. Hopefully for you too. But
No,
I'll
it's
be better
fun.
next time.
It
Don't
was
worry
fun, man.
about it. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching this.
Yeah,
Please
thank you.
subscribe to Ben's channel. I don't know if you wanna just mention anything, like, or do you have any? Are you gonna make any videos for this year? I know that around this time of year, sometimes you make videos for your channel.
Yes, so I have not made any movies and not made any videos this year because I've been busy, and when I'm not busy, sometimes I feel lazy. So, but I finally I wrote a script a couple days ago
Oh, nice.
for the movie buff video that I'll be doing very soon, involving my 4K TV because I love it so much. And of course, I think the other reason why you're saying Jesus, why like I come up with videos around this time is because it's the end of the year. So I like to talk about my favorite movies that I saw this past year. So I do have a list, and once I basically get to like the last couple days of December, and I've seen all the movies that I think I'm seeing for this year, yeah, I'll be putting that video together, and yeah, lots of great movies I saw this year. So you will, yeah, if you keep an eye on my channel, you'll see a video for that about my favorite movies of this year at the end of this month or at the very start of January.
Well, I am very excited. If you haven't subscribed to his channel, please do it. I'm gonna leave it in the description. And thank you again for joining us. And we will see you hopefully soon